Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chakra Way Meditation Podcast. And today, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. This one might need to come with a sort of a warning, 21 18 certificate. I don't know yet. We shall see. But I am really excited to be welcoming Jen Wadkey, excuse me, to the podcast. And Jen is a pleasure and orgasm coach, which I think, you can't hear that and not be intrigued for sure. And so I'm really excited to see where this goes because I know that Jen is going to fill us with a lot of information and hopefully make a really lovely connection between the work that I do with energy and spirituality and this incredibly important and huge part of everybody's lives, which is pleasure, orgasm, sensuality, sexuality, cannot be ignored. We are humans. This is, one of our biggest things that we're here for. So, welcome, Jen. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. And so let's get into this. Tell me, what is it that you do as a pleasure and orgasm coach? What does this consist of?
It is really about helping people uncover what is in their way to their ability to experience their own pleasure and orgasm to the most deepest level that they desire. And it's so interesting, I find, when somebody comes to me and wants to work on their pleasure and orgasm, we're never working, not never, but we're usually working with the things that are in the way and often not directly with pleasure and orgasm because so many of us have like sort of so much I think of it as societal gunk that we've taken on about who
Mhm.
we are sexually, who we are spiritually. You talked about energy as well, and I find when we're working with pleasure and orgasm, it's so hard to separate the energy and the spirituality out of that. I think they're so linked. And
Absolutely.
I find, so many people have a lot of raised in our sort of Judeo-Christian tradition in the West here, so many of us have like layers of conditioning that sometimes come from the church and from religion. So there's a lot of just kind of digging out these beliefs that we've taken on about who we are and what can we experience, and
Mm,
then blowing through them, right? Like just setting aside what doesn't work and replacing it with what does and what allows us to get into our pleasure and into our orgasm.
and I'm assuming that you're working just exclusively with women.
I am, although there are coaches who do work with men, but I just have found I draw a lot from my own experience. And as a cis het woman, that's kind of the body that I live in. So
Mhm.
that's who I definitely serve is
Yeah,
women.
yeah. Okay. So I completely hear you in terms of the baggage that gets in the way. Our conditioning around sex and around our own pleasure as women, I mean, I'm thinking historically, like ancestrally, we were given as women so much shame and blame and it's a very massive and complex subject to get into what we have the baggage that we carry from our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, and we live in this society now where it's mostly accepted that women can do what they want with their bodies and can expect to feel pleasure and experience orgasm but it hasn't always been that way, and even now, we are as women sometimes blamed for um being too inviting, being too gorgeous, too
Yeah.
irresistible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you start by unpicking? I mean, I suppose everybody's individual, of course, and everyone has their own history, of course, and it comes very much from the family and what was, I suppose, exhibited in the upbringing. Is that where you begin?
We typically start in one-on-one coaching sessions. We start with the question, like, what do you want to experience? Like, what kind of orgasm do you want? What kind of pleasure do you want to experience? So it's like, where do you want to go? And then we look at what have you been able to experience? And then we sort of live in that gap. Like,
Mm.
what's been going on that has not allowed you to get to, this infinite pleasure and orgasm? Like, what is in the way? And so we kind of dig into like, where does that come from? So we do work with a family. Like you said, we almost all have taken on learnings and teachings from our family around sexuality and what it means to be a woman, what it means to be in relationship. We dig into spirituality and the church and just sort of a lot of the teachings that we see, in media and our sort of in our culture. I think what you said was really interesting in that at the start, like women are allowed to have, this pleasure and orgasmic experiences in the way that we didn't before. But I think the big key there is that there's this, it feels like we've been given, like, okay, you have permission, you can go do this now. But like you said, we have all this ancestral wounding. Like you can't just, have oppressed women's sexuality for millennia and then in the 1960s go sexual revolution, okay, we're done, go ladies. like like you can't just turn the switch, right? There's
No.
so much that we have to uncover and unlearn.
Yeah.
It like, and a lot of us have just sort of become, I think, sort of numb and disconnected because we have all this millennia of wounding and gunk that we've taken on. So there's a lot of unwinding to be done.
Yeah. And do you find when you're working with clients, are they people who can't have an orgasm or can't reach orgasm, or are they people who want better orgasms? I think there's quite a big, I mean, there's a massive distinction between those two camps.
Yeah, it runs the gamut.
Mm.
People who have not experienced orgasm. Now there's a few, but that's seems to be so far a smaller group. And there's kind of this bigger group that it's almost like a generalized, like, I know there's more, like something is missing, and it's hard for them to articulate it.
Mm.
But there's this feeling that there's more for me. There's more out there. Like I want to have this kind of orgasm. I want to experience, this deep, deep fulfillment in my sex life and my partnership. And why can't I get there? And it feels really big and really vague because we don't really receive any sort of pleasure education. So
Mm.
there's often just this like, oh, like I want more, I want more.
Yeah.
So yeah, we kind of dive into that, what that more is.
Okay. And I talked to a while back, and I actually did two episodes with this lady because I loved her energy and she was font of information. She was a tantric teacher. So she was very much on that tantric trick, which was very much around that there is so much more than just a bit of, flesh slapping to pleasure and to sensuality and sexuality. And so I want to know, like, I mean, I want to go back. We'll come back into other things, but let's just get into the meat of it, as it were. And what are once you uncover somebody's history, their, whether it's shame or like, and that's a big thing that I want to come back to is shame. Because I think that plays a massive part in holding us back from feeling pleasure
Yeah.
and so on. Um, do you actually teach techniques like sexual techniques, or is it really more just the mindset stuff that you work with?
My training is very much tantric based. So we do a lot of work where we go into the body, like everything that we sort of all of our residual experiences and our desires live in the body. So there's a lot of like, let's go in and let's reconnect with that. What am I actually feeling in my body? What am I experiencing? Where am I holding, emotions or tightness or resistances? And then we really get into the body to liberate anything that's stuck. And then we work on creating, the ability to feel and really be in tune and sense physically what's happening in our body with our pleasure. Like, where does my pleasure reside? And can I connect with it? And can I learn how to expand it and control it and direct it? So that's the two biggest pieces, right? Is using the body to liberate and then using the body to like retrain what we're able to experience inside of our sexuality and our orgasm and our pleasure.
Yeah, I mean that's very much, it's very, and I knew that we were going to be aligned on a fair few things, but this is definitely one of them, is like really connecting with the body. Now, I connect through the body on my yoga mat, and through
Yeah.
the teaching of yoga. Um, and this disconnect between the mind and the body is, again, I feel somewhat conditioned by society and ancient history of sciences and so on. Um, but it's in connecting with the body and actually really having a conversation with the body. And for me, when I work with the chakras, this element of sensuality and pleasure and touch is down in the sacral chakra in the hips. Obviously, why wouldn't it
Yeah.
be? Which is also where one-to-one relationships live. So this would be very much, for me, it would be like hip opening, and like if you have stiff hips, what are you holding there? Because it's where your emotions live as well. So what's your, my modality is yoga in terms of connecting with the body. What is yours?
It's really about following the client's unique ecology. So we might use breath work to connect with what's stuck, what needs to be liberated, or we might use sounding. I love sounding. That was my own sort
Yes.
of big aha moment.
It's very
I,
powerful. Yeah.
yeah, and I find a lot of people, myself included, like can really find it difficult to like release through the throat. And I like kept on, I was cutting it off, cutting it off, cutting it off. Like I can't just like, blah. And then I had a session one day where I was like, blah. And I was like, whoa, like it just opened up, right? So we'll use sounding, we'll use movement, we use a lot of pleasure practices. It's really powerful to connect with whatever pleasure is available to help you create these new neural pathways to the new and deeper pleasure experiences that you want. So there's a lot of holistic tools we use. So, I mean, the primary modality though is following what is alive in the client's body. And
Mm.
that's different for every client, right? But I have some clients who are like really great sounders, like they blow my headphones off in a session, and which is amazing. I love it. And then I have some clients who are just able to like sort of go inside and they're like, oh, I can feel, this inner child living in my heart, and then we unwind it. So it's really depending on the client and
Mm.
what they specifically need.
Yeah, it's fascinating. How did you come to do this work, Jen? How did this happen for you?
I had my own journey where I was disconnected from my pleasure and feeling numb. Although, when I was told that at the time, I was like, that's not true. I'm sexually liberal. I'm open. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then I kind of was like, am I though? And, I think my biggest moment was when I got divorced, left less than 2 years of marriage.
Mm.
And I kind of just had this epiphany where I was like, I think they lied to me, society lied to me, culture lied to me about what marriage was and what relationships were. And I remember thinking, like, what else did they lie to me about around sex? So then I sort of just started different types of exploration and playing. I was in different kind of relationship configurations and just sort of organically came to what feels like a universal truth, and that is our pleasure and our sexuality is one of the most powerful sources we have for joy, fulfillment, for whatever we want in our life, and power. I think if you control somebody's pleasure, you control the person. It's so deeply disempowering to not allow people to experience pleasure as they desire. And once I sort of that belief had taken hold as absolutely true, I was just like, I need to work further with this. I want to explore more. What else is there? And I was like, what else is there? What else is there for pleasure? What else can I learn? What else can I
Mm.
experience? What else can I support others in moving along their own pleasure journey? So
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, quite the adventure. And I guess, in terms of coaching people and finding out all of these modalities, you just kind of, it became innate, I suppose, to you, this how to follow somebody else's, having experienced it yourself, how to follow somebody else's path. That must have been because, dealing with your own sexuality and sensuality is one thing, but understanding others, that's quite a big I don't know, for me when I think about doing that, it's like, oh, that's quite a big thing to delve into with somebody else. But then again, I guess in my work I do that as well because you're just getting into the very nub of what's holding people back.
Yeah.
And that brings me nicely back to this aspect of shame, because I think I think I can say personally, in my sort of when I first started becoming sexually active, shame, oh my God, that really held me back. And I didn't feel pleasure, like orgasmic pleasure, for years after becoming sexually active. I just was, there to serve. I don't know what I was doing. I was young and naive and I hadn't got a clue what I was doing. But I remember very clearly a big portion of shame. And I think that as women, we are given an inordinate helping of shame. And I don't think men, and maybe this is a massive generalization, and people will come at me and say, you're completely wrong. As a man, I feel shame too. But I think the majority of shame is lumped towards the women in. Would you
I
agree?
think so. I think so too. And I think that's not to say that men don't experience shame.
Yeah.
They absolutely do.
Yeah, of
And,
course.
I would say sort of acceptable sexual norms and morality hurts everybody.
Mm.
But I do think women have gotten more of it. Again, going back to that ancestral wounding, like how long ago wasn't that many generations ago where like I mean in the 50s if a woman had a child out of wedlock
God,
she was
a
doomed to
shame.
poverty. She was shunned. She couldn't get work. Like she, was forced to rely on the generosity of strangers to be clothed and housed. Like that is a different shame legacy that we've
Mm.
given women than we've given men. And that's not to say that, not to say that men's shame is lesser or shouldn't be dealt with, but I
Mhm.
think it is very different. And I think it is a very, very deep wound in the feminine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you are working with this aspect, we're very much delving deep into the divine feminine energy. How do you access the divine feminine in your, I have my ideas, but I'd love to
Yeah,
know.
for me personally, it's just I can't even articulate it in some ways. Like it's just so I feel very connected to, after doing all this work myself, reconnecting with the body, I'm very connected with my pussy generally, and it's just like even sitting here right now, I'm like, oh, like let's check in. And she's like comes alive and she's like, I love what we're doing. I love what we're talking about. And I find for me, like that's where the feminine comes from, is this connection with pussy, which is, I think, a portal that has never been recognized for the power that it is to take both men and women to amazing spiritual heights and pleasure. And I find when I listen to my pussy, there is a wisdom there that never leads me wrong, but I had to learn how to listen to it. I had to learn how to connect with it. And I find any sort of sensual movement, sensual dance, like my divine feminine loves that. She wants to come out and play. She likes to be out and flirty. And I like to do all the traditionally feminine things. That's not to say that everybody has to do that. It can manifest in different people in different ways, but I find for me, like she just wants to come out and play and dance and like
Mm,
she wants to
yeah.
feel everything. And I think she wants to hold everything. And I think that is something going back to talking about coaching, I find what I think one of my strengths is that my divine feminine wants to hold, like, I can hold all of your sexual trauma and your shame for you in a session. Like, I have that large receptive ability that feels to me to be very, very feminine, to just like open my arms and say, okay, I'm going to take this from you for the next 90 minutes. Like, here we
It's
go.
deeply in the feminine energy, in that
Yeah.
yin energy, which is, the not this gendered masculine feminine, but that very receptive energy
Yes.
of the feminine, which is nurturing and nature connected and receptive. And the masculine energy is that protector, provider, sort of logical side of us. And we all have both of these. And
Yes.
again,
Yes.
society upholds that masculine, you know, achieve, work it out, find a solution. It's a um that is also, perceived as a very masculine point of view, or a masculine trait. But we hold those within us. But yeah, society has upheld the qualities of that yang energy, that masculine, the solar energy, as being the right energy, as being the
The
useful, good
the
energy.
default. It's the default.
Exactly. It's what
Yeah.
this is what society and capitalism, frankly, is built on. And so, it's a hard thing to get away from. So I think we have to work quite hard to go, actually, I'm going to consciously connect with the divine feminine with that inner goddess. And we all have it, whether you're a man or a woman, that you have, however you identify, you have an inner goddess, you have a divine feminine energy, because it is
Yes.
that connecting, receptive, soft, intuitive nature that is there, that has been, not used you're not going to make, you know, CEO of Fortune 500 if you're just using your feminine energy. You got to be that masculine energy has got to come through. And so we battle with that, I think.
Yeah. And I think, yes, and I do just want to take a moment to highlight that, yes, we both have masculine and feminine, and we're talking in those polarities, not gender. So thank you
Yeah.
for pointing that out. Um, and I think we have this notion, like when we talk about the feminine being soft, I think that's often misunderstood as being weaker in a sense. And I think that is one of the most detrimental ideologies to hold, is that the feminine is weak. Like,
Yeah.
there is something so powerful about being able to create these connections and being able to hold space and hold other people's emotions and experiences that allow them to transform in whatever way they need to. Maybe it's that going deeper into their feminine, maybe it's going more into their masculine, whatever it is. I had this client who I was like, I should be paying you. Created this session with her where she managed to, connect with some ancestral knowledge. And I just watched her receive this amazing, powerful download. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting so much just holding this container and witnessing it for you. And that's, in my opinion, my experience, my coaching, that's the power of the feminine. Like, I created that space. We co-created. It's not just me, like, this is what I'm
Mm,
going to do for you. We co-created that, and I could hold that for her so that she was able to sink into this experience. And I think
mm.
that's, it's soft, but it is not,
Powerful.
it's super powerful, right? So I think sometimes that's the the element that we really miss in society when we talk about the feminine. Soft is not weak. It's
Yeah.
not without its power. It's inordinately powerful.
Yeah. I think that when you truly connect with your feminine power, there is something it's kind of, I don't know how to describe it. I was going to say like a sort of like a bomb going off, but it is when you have that realization of the strength of what it is to be a female, and have that feminine power, you realize that actually it is the strongest, most important, or not most important, but it is the most potent of powers. I mean, if you think about, it's very easy for us to sort of brushstroke society in, oh, it's all capitalism and masculine energy and blah, blah, blah. That's a very sort of trite thing to say, really. And I said it, so I'll own that. But but when you look at it and deeper, like the power of the feminine, the power of the feminine energy is what men really fight for in a way.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
battles have been, lands have been taken, all because we want to keep creating life. And we are, as womb-bearing beings, the people who are creating life. The power of that is very intimidating to some men historically, not
Yes.
necessarily maybe, but when you step into your feminine power, there's a quiet grace within that that doesn't need to be shouting from the rooftops. It just
Hmm.
is.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, totally, totally, totally. Um, yes, so much yes to all of what you just said there.
The power of femininity is just beyond. Um, and it's when we step into that, I guess that when you step into that power, that's when the pleasure, the sensuality, the orgasm then begins to really get fired up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, there really is something to the idea that to, come into your feminine, especially in a sexual context, is a surrender. And again, this idea that we think, oh, surrender, you're giving up, you're giving in, you're weak. But to surrender is so powerful, like to choose to just allow yourself to sink into that, to surrender to that pleasure, to not fight it. Like, so I think my own sexual experiences, sometimes there is a bit of like fighting that pleasure because it can be really scary if you haven't experienced it before, right? That surrendering, that vulnerability
Mm.
can be very scary. But when you can learn how to fully open to that, and like, again, it's not weak, it's incredibly powerful to just say, I'm going to let my body, my psyche, my spirituality, my soul, all of that experience all of the pleasure that is available to me in this sexual experience, whether it's, solo by yourself or with a partner. Like,
Yeah. So this is what I wanted to ask you as well. So it's all very well. So we've opened up to our divine feminine. We're feeling receptive, gorgeous, all of those things, really connected with ourselves. And then partner comes along, and maybe partner isn't quite as enlightened or as like, I don't know, how do you train your partner? Like in a way, that's the wrong phrase, but like,
yeah,
you're on this journey which is very personal. It's very, you centric. But then there's and sure, when you're on your own experiencing pleasure, fantastic. We all love a bit of that. Goodness, wonderful. But when you add somebody else into the equation, um, who may not have been enlightened or, has maybe watched too much porn and thinks that pleasure is just like pumping or I don't know, whatever. Like, how do you get over that obstacle of the other?
yeah, it can be a huge challenge. I think it's so important to continue to have solo sessions. I firmly believe that we all have a sexuality that is our own, that we
Mhm.
can and should play with by ourselves. It's an amazing place to develop and connect. And so when you bring a partner in, I never want people to like give up that, male or female, everybody.
Mm.
You don't want to give up that place where you can fully surrender without, fear of, not fear of, that's not the right word, but without worry that a partner's not going to be able to hold you or support you or witness you in all of that. So I think there has to be some conversation with the partner, like, this is what I, experience on my own. This is what happens. And I think you have to, it can be really hard if your partner isn't on board. And I don't have a really great, like, wrap it up answer.
No,
It's
well, I mean,
it's a lot of
there's never going to be because every person is going to be different and need different kind of, and I suppose what it comes down to is communication, doesn't it? And
Mhm.
being as sure in yourself or as confident in yourself to actually ask
Yeah.
for what you want. And
Yes.
that's the other thing. How on earth do you do that? Mm.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and if you have a partner who's not there with you, I don't it can be really, really challenging, and to feel that you're not on that it's such a catchphrase. You're not on the same vibration,
No, it's
but that's
true.
what it is,
Yeah.
and that can be really, really challenging. And I think you either have to I mean, how much work should anyone do to bring their partner up to their vibration? I think that's such an individual question. And if your
Mm.
partner is resistant to raising their vibration and coming up to meet you, I think the question that you have to ask yourself is, am I okay for whatever amount of time to bring myself down to meet them where they are? Like, you have to find that meeting somewhere. So if you're constantly up here and your partner's constantly down here, like, how long are you going to be how long are you willing to bring yourself here to meet them if they're not willing to do the work? And I think that's a key too, right? If they're willing to do the work but they're slowly sort of progressing, that's one thing. But for me personally, a partner who's like, I don't believe in this hokey, you know
Mm.
breathing together, eye contact, tantric stuff, or if they don't believe in it or can't get there, I don't know. Like, I don't know. For me personally, I don't know how long I could be with a partner that didn't want to grow with me. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's such a personal part of the journey, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you have a long-term partner who you can really have these kind of conversations with, then that's something that is ongoing and that growth together is really something that can actually bring you closer together emotionally
Oh,
as physically. I mean, big time, really important. And I suppose I'm thinking about sort of, like a casual encounter or a new relationship. And you're like, okay, I'm at this level. You are not, it's like dangerous. It's I guess yeah, I mean I guess it's just you have to see where you both land. And
yeah, and especially for me, like in a casual encounter or any encounter, like, you don't always have to be operating at your highest vibration. Like,
yeah,
this notion that once we achieve a level, we stay at a level, I don't think that's true. Like, there's peaks and valleys, right? Like, I've achieved, really great touchless orgasms. And some days I'm like, I just want my vibrator. Like, I
yeah.
don't want to do a full pleasure practice. And I think it can be the same with partnered sex. Like, it's like sometimes I just want to go have a casual encounter with somebody I find really hot. Maybe they're not quite up, as high as I can vibrate sometimes, but that's
Mm.
okay. So tonight I'm just gonna, like,
Just
bring
enjoy
my
them.
bring my best, hope they bring their best, and just enjoy. And it doesn't always have to be this, like, cosmic life-changing experience. Like, sometimes sex is, messy and funny, and sometimes it doesn't go right. I've had numerous encounters where I'm like, this is laughing, or I'm like, this is not working. Like, it's not happening today. Like, let's go have some wine because we need to tap out here. Like,
Yeah.
it happens. It's life. It's not
Mm.
perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And you just mentioned something that I'm glad you did because I want to come back to this. And this is something that you talk about on your website and so on, which is the touchless orgasm.
Yes.
So tell me, what on earth is a touchless orgasm?
Yeah, it's sometimes called an energy orgasm as well.
Okay.
I really look at it as a paradigm shift in how we are able to experience pleasure. So instead of looking sort of for external sources, which are lovely and wonderful,
Mhm.
partners, hands, toys, I'm not giving any of that up. But in certain days where I'm doing a practice, it's a shift where we put that all aside and we instead look internally for that source of pleasure. So we, as we talked about earlier, get out of the head. We want to get into the body and find like, where am I feeling pleasure? What pleasure is available alive inside of me right now without any sort of self-stimulation? And then we work with that and we can build it, we can expand it, we can grow it to the point of touchless orgasm, although that in some ways can take that can take people a bit longer to get to.
I
But even
imagine
if
there's breath work involved in that as
yep,
well, big
yep,
time.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
moving the energy around.
I mean, it's fundamentally a simple process. It's using sort of, I call it the activated mind, right? So you're actively using your awareness and your energy to focus on your body and then to expand that pleasure. So body, mind, pleasure. But where it can get to be difficult for people is all those blocks come up again, right? So when you're
Mm.
working with touchless orgasm, everything that's in your way, like all of your conditioning, all of your beliefs, what you think about your body, what you think you deserve, your self-worth, all of that comes up when you're working with touchless orgasm.
Mm.
But it's everybody can achieve orgasm and everybody can achieve touchless orgasm.
Mm. And I think if you've ever had, what should I call it? A fun dream.
That's where I started.
You've witnessed that that is a possibility.
Yes. Yeah.
That touch, because that is yeah, as you say, that's probably like the original touchless orgasm is having a nice dream
Yeah.
in your sleep. And so we know, I guess that's a good place to start because you know that it's possible. And it's that
Yes.
that limitation is taken away when you go, actually, yeah, I can achieve that amount of pleasure without moving a muscle.
Yeah.
And then you realize, huh, I have that energy within me.
Yeah.
Let's
That
bring it
was
up.
my
Yeah.
my own journey. I had some full-blown orgasms in my sleep in my early 20s. Talked about it to my girlfriends and they're like, "Are you sure that you weren't actually rubbing one out?" And I was like, "No, I was asleep. I wasn't touching myself.
Yeah.
I promise." But there wasn't really any where for me to put that, right? Like my sexual education, I'd been taught that men have wet dreams, right? So I knew that that was
Yeah.
real, but it
Yes.
had never been talked about that women can experience that.
No, I've
And I was
never heard
like,
anybody talk about that before. And
right, right,
I
but we
exactly,
do.
yes, absolutely we do. And I hope
Yeah,
that all of you listening do, because
yes.
what a lovely surprise that is in the middle of heaven.
Yeah. And then I kind of just realized like again, just this sort of idea had been fermenting in my brain for, I mean, a couple decades. Where it's like, if I can do that in my sleep, like, why can't I do that awake? Like, my brain has the power to do that. It did that unconsciously. And that's a lot of the work in coaching too, is right, getting under the unconscious, like what is under there. And I just, you know, searched and searched and searched for the tools to recreate this consciously. And, as part of my coaching training, did a live retreat and I had two sessions where, my hands were on the mat and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna come in the room full of 80 women. I was like, this is amazing, it's real. And then I went back home. I was like, okay, can I recreate this without the energy of all these women around me? Because that certainly helped me get there. And I was like, yeah, this I can do this on my own in my living room. And so I, kind of kept playing with it and started sort of teaching it. And it's like anybody can use these tools. They're not complicated. Um, to get to orgasm takes a lot of consistent work, like I said, because there is, a lot of us, we all have something in the way that we need to
Yeah.
unpack and unwind. And you don't have to have a touchless orgasm if you don't want to, but even the practice of just working on touchless pleasure is going to
Mm.
enhance your sex life, partnered and solo, in order like
Mm.
to the nth degree. So
But it's also opening up your energy. It's such a fundamental side of our energy, of our energetic body. It's such a powerful, potent, I mean, it's you can't deny that it is the most, is the most important in a way, because that is what we are as human beings. As all animals, our main function in life is to reproduce. Like our sexuality is really important, and it's been suppressed by society and the history, what
Yep.
have you.
Yep.
Um, but to reclaim it and to understand that in connecting with your sexuality, with your sexual energy, and it doesn't have to be, grubby, dirty. It's like a beautiful, powerful, amazing thing to have. It does lit the rest of your energy will lift through that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a, which is why I really wanted to talk to you, because I feel like, we spend a lot of time talking about our inner child or our this or our that or modalities to heal ourselves. But actually we all have the power to heal ourselves. And actually I feel like this connecting with your pleasure, with your sexuality, with this incredible thing that we have.
Yeah.
I mean, what a gift that we have, that we
Yeah.
are able to feel this amount of pleasure. We're just human beings having a human experience, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of the biggest pleasures. It is it's top of the
Yeah.
pile pleasures that we have. So why wouldn't we invite that into our lives big time?
Yeah. And one of I have this up on my YouTube, going back to shame. One of my
Mm,
favorite pleasure practices is the shamegasm. It's like,
okay.
go in and look at that shame. Like I've had since the pandemic, my shame monster like came out full force, like never before in my life, along with some self-worth stuff that popped up.
Okay.
And you can use this for any emotion. It doesn't have to be shame, but I find it super, super effective for shame. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna look at it, I'm gonna let that shame monster like say all the awful, horrible things that they want to say about how terrible I am, what a worthless human I am, and on and on and on and on. And then I switch into pleasure. And then I switch back and I let the shame speak, and we go back into pleasure. And it just becomes this like you almost can't stay in that shame while you're going back and forth to pleasure. And then that shame starts to transform and transmute. And then you're having this shamegasm, right? And I find it so powerful to look at this shame and go, I'm going to live with you. I know you're here. I know you're inside me. Maybe every once in a while you have something of value to say, I'm still going to experience pleasure, whether you're here or not. Like, come along for the ride. Like, we can still have orgasms, we can still have pleasure, we can still reach spiritual heights with this shame alive inside of me. And it's almost like a big, middle finger to this shame. It's like, I can live
Love
with you,
that.
I can survive you, and I can surpass you and live in pleasure, even when you won't shut up.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. Because I mean, all difficult emotions, and like shame, um, they in order to sort of shift them, in order to work through them, in order to kind of break them up, I always think of them like sort of crusty, like the scale in the bottom of your kettle, you gotta get break it up. But you've got to, whatever difficult emotion you're feeling, sitting with it, being with it, experiencing it, embracing it, going, okay, here you are. Let's look you straight in the eye and see what you've got to say. And actually, it's kind of a bit like a in real life, if you were to confront a bully, they'd probably just like they disappear.
Yeah.
And it's the same, like sitting with your emotions. And this is what often I find is one of the biggest lessons of yoga and teaching yoga, is that, yeah, that thing is not comfortable. So you're opening your hips, say you're in Baddha Konasana with your knees out wide, your hips are screaming, your groins are screaming, and you go, okay, you can either resist it, invite more tension in to surround that, or you can go, okay, so this is not very comfortable. It hurts. I'll just take 3 more breaths and then I'll be done. And as soon as you surrender to it and just go, okay, I'll just sit with it, I'll just live with it for, 3 more breaths or whatever, suddenly you find that it begins to dissipate. It just begins to dissolve. And it's such an important lesson to feel physically, because then you can take it into your emotional life as well. And so this is exactly the same kind of
Yeah.
practice with this shamegasm. I love that.
Yeah.
It's sort
Yeah. All of those emotions, shame, rage, jealousy, all of that stuff, they live in the shadows. And if you don't look at them,
of,
you're feeding them,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
So,
Amazing. So, Jen, we've talked for quite a long time. This is such a, it's really fun conversation, and I really hope that we've inspired people to just kind of like embrace their bodies and their pleasure a little bit more, because energetically, it is such a powerful thing to do. It's really empowering, and quite often, I talk about empowerment living in the solar plexus chakra, but actually, they feel, I think it can rise up from the sacral up and upwards, kundalini rising and all of that good stuff, and
yeah.
let's the kundalini rising is a good example. So in, Hindu mythology, you've got, or is it kundalini in tradition anyway, the at the base of the spine you have the serpent snake Shakti, which is the feminine, rises up. And the reason why you want this rising up of the energy of the Shakti rising through the central Sushumna Nadi up to the crown chakra, because that's where her lover Shiva resides. So that bliss is Shakti rising to meet her lover Shiva at the crown, and then
Yeah,
spiritual
totally.
orgasm.
Totally. Yep. We all want those.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
good.
I'm interested. I've written down on my little notes here as we've been talking types of orgasm, because I feel as an orgasm coach, you might be able to tell us what, because there are different types of orgasm, aren't there?
Yeah, I used to insist that there wasn't, that orgasm was like really just the release of, built up pleasure.
Yeah.
And um I was wrong. There are different types of orgasm. And I think the thing to remember, sometimes I think when we talk about types of orgasm, I worry that it might seem like another element that we have to chase to be like sexually liberated and
Yes, it's sort
open-minded,
of
right?
checklist. Oh, I better have all of them. Yeah,
Yeah,
fair enough. I
yeah.
get
And so
that. Yeah.
so
Not really that helpful. Mm.
I don't talk about it a lot for that reason. And also because how we experience our own orgasm can vary, even if it's, say, a clitoral orgasm, how we experience that clitoral orgasm can vary greatly depending on, are we with a partner? Where are we in our cycle? What's going on in our psyche? What's going on in our body? Like there can be such variance. Um, that I don't know. I don't have a great answer for this one either.
No, I think
I'm
you've given
not,
the greatest answer in that there is no real definite, we can't label this, and pleasure is pleasure. And if you're feeling pleasure,
yeah,
then you're winning, I'm guessing.
yeah, yeah. I agree. If you're feeling pleasure, you're winning. Yes, totally. Totally.
So, Jen, tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can work with
Yeah,
you.
my website is jenwadkey.com, and depending on when people listen and might pop over to the site, there is either going to be a free introduction to touchless orgasm. But I'm in the process. I'm so excited. I'm in the process of revamping that, where I'm going to give away the entire program in a book for $5. You get everything. So depending on when they listen, one of those two options are going to be alive on my site, and then they can get in touch with me from there if they want to do any further one-on-one work or get further support. There's a few options available. So,
Awesome. Brilliant.
and I'm also, sorry, on Instagram, Jen Wadkey as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks, Jen. It's been a blast. I feel it's been an education, and it's been really fun chatting with you. So I hope everybody else has enjoyed learning all about this. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. This was such a lovely conversation. Thank you for having me.